You hold a Colt single action up anywhere in the world, and a tribesman in New Guinea is going to say, cowboy.
Yeah, cowboy gun.
Yeah.
Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine presents the Guns Podcast. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs, both audio and video, as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent, welcoming you, and today we're going to talk about, I think, a pretty interesting topic. We're going to talk about timeless firearms that are still in use. And, when we stop and think about the old guns, you think, well, that's nice. I saw one at the gun shop, but there's still a lot of them that maybe you hadn't considered that are still a good choice no matter what you're doing. So make sure you like and subscribe. That's how we justify our existence. And today, my guest is Roy Huntington. I know that's a big shock. He's our unofficial co-host. Welcome, Roy.
I feel welcome.
Right. Well, good. I'll send some pastries over. But, today, like I said, today's topic, timeless firearms, and I got a whole list of them. And really, that's almost the unofficial theme here at Guns Magazine Presents the Guns Podcast, or as I like to call it, Fudland, as we've been accused of being, or the Fud Kingdom. But there are still a lot of old guns that are still a good choice no matter what you're doing. So we're going to run down a list. But before we get to the specifics, any thoughts on I got to be careful here, old guns that are still relevant and useful today, and try to keep it under like 2 or 3 hours, Roy?
Well, I'm sure we'll get into it. But I know, and maybe this is another show, guns that tried and failed, Yeah. I think, especially us being in the industry, you see these huge rollouts and then cue the crickets, But meanwhile, the Glocks are still around, Colts are still around, Smith Wesson revolvers are still around, Remingtons, these iconic firearms and firearm designs remain. And I think we both know why, because sometimes change just for the sake of change doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like if you have something that works perfectly fine and then you change it for no reason whatsoever.
Yep.
Now people are offended because they just bought the old one. Are you saying that theirs isn't any good? Or, so yeah, a lot of them have come and go, but there's a lot of them that are still here, and they're still here for reasons.
Exactly. And I did write down some of those reasons, and I kind of wanted to go through that. Reliability and simplicity. Things were maybe bulkier, heavier, but they worked because they were simple. And sometimes we've all had guns or accessories that were maybe a little over-engineered and fragile and complex. And, the old stuff tended not to be that way. It had to work because they couldn't get tolerances down to half of a gnat's whisker, and so it had to be a little more bigger, robust, less close tolerances. So the reliability can be there, provided the firearm was taken care of, and they tend to be simpler in general. Familiarity, that was a thought that we kind of take it for granted, but if you throw an 870 into my hands, I don't care what vintage, maybe even what accessories you put on it, but I can run that thing pretty well because, as I've said before, back in my days as a baby cop at the police academy, we had to push on the earth if we couldn't field strip that thing and clear jams, blindfolded in the dark kind of thing. So if somebody has been carrying a lever action, for 40 or 50 years, they're probably pretty good at it. So that knowledge does carry over not just to that individual, but to the group as a whole. So looking at a couple of the other ideas, and then the tradition. As we say, guns should be fun. They're one letter from fun. So if the tradition makes you feel warm and fuzzy about that firearm, and it doesn't have to, that may not be a criteria for you, but I'm here to tell you, as you get older and more experienced, the tradition behind it, the story behind the gun, who carried the gun, who maybe carried that particular gun, those things really do matter. So, anything I missed there, Roy?
No, I mean, I think you're right. One of the primary reasons why classic gun designs remain is because people feel good about it. And feeling good about it is a significant reason why people own guns. I mean, not all of us have to have a gun, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Uh, and so we do it because we like it and because we enjoy it. So why would I own something that I don't like and enjoy?
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
I mean, I have working guns. You know, I have a rusty $75 Marlin 22 rifle I keep in my Easy Go, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a tool. It's a nail, right? I have
Yeah.
no, if I dropped it in the pond, I'd go, oh, guess I better go get another one, you know, right? But then I have
Yeah.
guns that do have that sense of attachment, and it's like when I pick one up, it starts a continuous loop video in my mind
Yeah.
of memories and feelings, and and likes, and all that kind of stuff. And I think most of these iconic designs that we're talking about is does that. I
Yeah.
mean, to this day, if I pick up a GI World War II 1911 45, a Parkerized genuine World War II veteran gun, and I load it with hardball and rack the slide and snick the safety on and put it on my desk here, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yep.
like this is going to protect me. you know,
Yep.
I mean, because it's protected us for 115 years, I think, give or take a little bit. So,
Exactly. And, that was actually going to be the first one on the list, but we don't necessarily have to talk about it because it's pretty clear the 1911 is still relevant today to a lot of us. I've got one sitting right over here on my desk, and I carry it a lot. It's an officer's model. But yeah, the 1911 is probably the perfect example of what I'm talking about. A gun that, by all rights, probably should have been buried in the past, but it's still being manufactured by countless manufacturers. A lot of people still choose it as their carry or use weapon of choice. Oh, I said weapon. That's bad. But it's a good gun, and it still works today. And I don't know of anybody that picks up a 45 and says, well, I'm undergunned, but I'm going to carry it anyway. So it's a good gun. But I've actually got one. I'm going to shock you here, Roy. Okay. You ready for this? Are you sitting down? I know you are,
yeah.
but I'm going to say the Glock 17. And when you stop and think about it, 40 some years ago, that thing really got popularized. And as we've talked countless times, I'm not a huge fan of polymer guns and plastic guns, black plastic, tactical, but I own a lot of them. And I freely admit, and I wanted to start this list with, that's an oldie, that's a classic, and you can buy them virtually any place. You can find some really old and beat up ones because they've been around that long, but they're obviously are a well designed, well thought out gun that still works today. And you never see people go, well, it's just a Glock. They work, and I think they're going to be around another 100+ years. So I don't want to beat that point too much, but I also wanted to point out that even though we are royalty in the FUD kingdom, we recognize that things like Glocks that have been around and stood the test of time, they're timeless classics. So anything you want to add to that?
Well, even if you're a Dodge fan, you have to acknowledge the fact that a Ford F-150 is in the same category. You may not like them, you would never own one, but they're iconic, and they have a legacy.
Yeah.
Personally, I look at a Glock as I look at a 10 millimeter Harbor Freight wrench. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing really special about it, but it certainly does the job.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't have the same feeling if I load a Glock and put it on my desk here as I do when I take that old Colt and load it and put it on the desk, and I don't know if it's because I have more of an affiliation or because of the historical significance of the 1911 or pre-war Smith and Wesson hand ejector revolver or something like that, single action Colt. But you're right. I mean, it is, iconic. I mean, I think in the manner that 70s, late 60s and 70s muscle cars are,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than the Glock may be more practical, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what blows my mind when I was putting this list together is there are people that are listening or watching us right now who are of that age that they grew up with that. Truly, that's what they think of when they were a kid and dad was showing him the guns or taking him out to teach him how to shoot. Probably used a Glock, 17 or 19. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around that because I was already shooting a lot when we really started carrying semi-autos. And it's eye-opening to me to think of the folks that, and they're not young at this point, that grew up and look at those as, with fond nostalgia. So I wanted to add those. Yes, we are the kings of the FUD world, but we recognize what is a timeless classic, and Glock certainly is. But Roy, go ahead.
I just want to say, if you are one of those people, please put it in the comments, because what I'm curious to know is, do you have that same sense of attachment and fondness? In other words, I mean, I understand if you have inherited your father's first Glock 17, I mean, I would assume you would hold that with a certain level of esteem, I think, but I'm not sure. And, if you inherited your father's 1911 that he carried in World War II, or you inherited your dad's Glock that he carried as a policeman somewhere, does that have the same significance to you? Yeah. And if it does, educate us. So
yeah, exactly. But now I'm going to get Roy all, as I like to say, hot and frothy, and we may have to throw some cold water on him at some point. But the next gun on the list is, I think we can all agree, is Smith & Wesson K-frames. The basic design's been around since the late 1800s, and they're still going strong today. They've been through their ups and downs, but Roy, wax poetic about Smith & Wesson double actions.
Boy, you're right, though. I mean, they wrote the book, literally, on that. What I find is that there are two kinds of shooters families. There are households that grow up with Colts, and then the rest of their lives, all the kids, grandkids, everybody, they're Colt shooters.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know anything about Smith & Wesson revolvers. They don't even look at them in the gun stores, And the same thing applies, though, Smith & Wessons. I grew up in a Smith & Wesson house, so my first Smith & Wesson revolver was a 6-inch pre-war Model 10, a hand ejector, and followed by hundreds and hundreds ever since then. So I think either of those would certainly qualify deep into this category, and I think for a lot of reasons, exposure to them, who here has carried Smith & Wesson revolvers as policemen, grandfathers, great grandfathers, the military. I mean, the list is just endless. And so, I mean, it's like seeing a picture of a Model T Ford and a modern Ford. I mean, it's the same thing, so we have them from the beginning all the way till now.
Yep. And you already touched on the next item on the list, which is Colt double action revolvers, the Detective Special, the Python. Yeah, those are little newer designs per se, but obviously Colt has been going since the 1870s, but Colt firearms are still there. And when you were saying that, Roy, families are either Chevy or Ford, Smith & Wesson or Colt, and you'll get this, you're either a Canon or a Nikon shooter, and never the twain shall meet.
It's exactly the same. Yeah, it's exactly the same. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to move on, but if you've got words of wisdom, please continue.
Well, Colt was fortunate because, of course, they had their iconic black powder guns, the 1851 Navy and the 1860s and those guns, the Walker Colt, of course. And then once the cartridge guns came out, they had the most iconic Colt ever, the Colt single action. You hold a Colt single action up anywhere in the world, and a tribesman in New Guinea is going to say, cowboy.
Yeah, cowboy gun.
Yeah. And it was Colt 1911, same thing. So they're big juju when it comes to all that. And, with Smith and Wesson, I think the Model 29 Dirty Harry gun is that. I mean, Smith and Wesson was on the radar, of course, but I think when that movie came out and the Model 29 was the star, suddenly Smith and Wesson got a focus of attention that it never had before.
Agreed.
And it hasn't lost it since.
Yep. Well, we're going to move away from the handguns. There are others, certainly, and let us know in the comments, or you can hit me at editor@gunspodcast.us. Be interested in hearing what you think certain handguns fall into this category. The next thing on the list, I'm not going to beat this to a point, and I'm not even going to throw it to you, Roy, unless you have something strong to say, but the AR-15, the M16, it's pushing 60 years, and it certainly is America's rifle, and ad nauseum, we have said we like them, we shoot them, but they don't give us warm and fuzzies. But I do have to agree, it's a timeless American classic, and the military's kind of moving on from it, but it's going to be around for a long, long, long time. So Colt or AR-15 fans, M16 fans, yeah, okay, we got it. Good on you. The next one though is Comrade, is the AK-47. It's been around a long time, since just after World War II. And I got to admit, I am not an AK fan at all. I know Jeremy Clow, one of our longtime writers, is dialing the phone as I speak to tell me how wrong I am, because he is a huge fan of the AK. But there's no denying that it's a classic, and there's probably I've seen various numbers. There's a lot of ARs in the United States, but there's a whole heck of a lot more AKs across the world. So that family of designs is absolutely timeless. And I got to admit, as Jeremy Clow will attest, it's still a good gun of choice for certain things, especially for self-defense. So we never really talk about the AK here.
No, and for me personally, part of it is that, it's an evil gun, because the communists did it and everything. And you always see the people in Africa who are killing each other holding taped up, painted AKs. And so it kind of has a bad reputation. But I think a good quality AK, one that's made in Europe as opposed to China, for instance, and stuff like that. I've shot them. The Valmet had basically a copy. And they're high quality, they're good guns, they shoot well. I've shot a lot of full auto ones. It's very interesting. With that cartridge, you can kind of write your name with it almost, in little short bursts. I can see it. To me though, it's still a tool. So I don't look at an AK and say, and wax poetic. Apologies to Jeremy. But it is an effective tool, and the only thing is I have done accuracy testing with them, and I can't remember the details. I'm sure someone will correct us, but initially, like 6 inches at 100 yards was well within what an AK could do. And that was, but probably in the real world, that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, what more do you need than that? And so I can say this though, I've never owned one. Yeah.
I've only had one briefly, and for me, the only thing I really appreciate about the AK is the simplistic design that they made work. I mean, it was really designed to be mass produced, and as we joke, but it's kind of true. They're making them in caves in Afghanistan to this day, and there's a certain. It gets a couple of style points for that simplicity, for serving the purpose, which I agree with you, Roy, in most cases is evil, but it's still got to give it props. It's still a viable gun. And Jeremy, I'm sorry, but we at least got to mention it because there's an awful lot of them out there. And
it's such a Russian gun. I mean, it reminds me of a T-34 tank,
right?
Right. I mean, they're not polished. They just literally, they're a brick. They
Yeah.
literally like a SKS, right?
Yeah.
I did own
Yep.
it was a Russian SKS. It was actually really well made. It was, nicely
Yeah.
made gun. Uh, but again, it was a wrench, you know, and with terrible wood, and
Yeah.
it was just made to do a job. Kind of like Russian handguns are that way too.
Yeah.
So Tokarev pistols, for instance. Yeah, their whole own category, kind of. And I know there are collectors and people who are passionate about it. And I'm sure we'll hear about it. And we're idiots because we don't understand. We do understand, but we just don't have that gene, I
Yeah.
think. So.
Yep. And this next one kind of is in the same category as a military gun, but it is basically the big daddy, the original gangster of bolt action rifles, and that's the Mauser 98 and that series. Its immediate predecessors and everything that's descended from that. It's still considered, especially I know, a dangerous game. Folks really like the design, controlled feed. They were doing it right, and I think it helped that the Germans were the originators, and they had a great tradition, or still have a great tradition, of building quality equipment. If the Russians had designed the 98, it probably wouldn't have been popular because it probably wouldn't have worked. I mean, let's call it what it is. The Germans know how to build stuff, and but even today, and there was an incident recently. I think we all know that apparently a 98 action was used. So they're very clearly still a relevant firearm today.
Well, if it wasn't for that, there probably would not be bolt action hunting rifles of any
Yeah.
kind,
Yep.
period. I mean, there were some early, the Lee, Metford, the Lee Enfields. There were some other, but really most of those came from the interest and ideas that were generated by the very earliest bolt action Mausers, just when the first time one of those opened up the bolt and fed from whatever kind of magazine, everyone else, excuse me, took notice, and continue to do so today. So no, you're right. I don't think it gets any more iconic than that.
Yeah. So. And okay, when you talk about icon, and we've said before, we try to avoid that because everything's iconic nowadays. And very few things actually are. But this is an icon. Like you said, Roy, you show the tribesmen a single action army and they'll say, oh, cowboy gun. You show them this gun, and it's I've got the Winchester 94 on the list, but really that represents Winchester rifles in general. The 94 was the most commercially successful, still produced today. We're actually in the middle of a lever gun resurgence. Marlin certainly makes good stuff, but it's the Model 94 that really kind of typifies that entire, let me use a big word, archetype. And, what more we've talked about lever and lever guns and lever love. I don't know what more I can really say other than they're still making them. They're still popular. I've owned a bunch. I've shot a bunch. That was the first high powered rifle I ever shot. So, I don't think anybody would argue, the point of including it in our list today.
No, and I for me, a lot of it is the heritage. I mean, because when I pick up a Model 94, I go back 100 years,
Yeah.
and so it's like you can feel that legacy and the history in the gun when your hand closes around the receiver. I don't know. It's Colt had an ad a million years ago, and it was a cowboy, and he was sitting around a campfire, and he was holding a single action, right? And it was real simple. I don't remember it exactly, but it said, a snap of a twig, the darkness outside of the fire ring, Colt, and then confidence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a 94 does that for me. I mean, those are I have two of them here that I built cut down guns. And I mean, if there was a noise outside right now, I'm 3 steps away from one.
Yeah.
And that's the one I would pick up,
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
Hey, sidebar here, Roy. We've been talking about this for a couple of months, but we got to come out sometime soon. You know what? My truck gun, I've said it's an old 1970s Model 94 that I bought real right. I think it's got a 20-inch, maybe. Let's cut that sucker down to about 16 and a half. And I know some people say it's bastardizing and making tactical, but that's my truck gun because it doesn't scare people as badly as pulling out an AR platform. The 30-30 cartridge is certainly nothing to sneeze at, and I have a lot of faith and confidence in it. But yeah, if that barrel was a little bit shorter, we might be able to do something. So
we could do that. We'll make a video and then embarrass ourselves, So
For sure.
I think it's a good idea. But no, it is, and I'll use the iconic word again.
Yeah.
But it is. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Even people who don't really like them still they kind of go, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, my first experience shooting a high-powered rifle, when a friend's dad said, "You want to shoot this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can shoot that." And I was 8 or 10 at the time, and it scared me, but I had to do it because that's what John Wayne carries. And even non-shooters, I'm scared of guns. You want to shoot this? Yeah. So it has that kind of effect. Now this next gun has this kind of effect on you, Roy, and it is certainly iconic also in its niche. The Ruger 1022. I think you were the one that said everybody needs to own a 1022 or multiple 1022s.
I think everybody does.
Yep.
I mean, I remember when they were $65 brand new.
Amazing.
I know.
Amazing.
It was just like, it competed with the Marlin Model 60.
Yeah.
Which arguably should probably be on our list. Talk about another.
That's a good one. I never thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, there are still millions of them slowly rusting away, behind kitchen doors. Yeah. And stuff like that. But yeah, I think a 1022, again, to me, it's a little bit more of a tool than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do like what you can do with them. Companies like Volkwartsen, which I think my hat says Volkwartsen, I think. But yeah, I think it did. They do things to 1022s and with 1022s that really changes things. And to me, that was when you look at one of those kind of 1022s, that's something different, But when you see that plain Jane 1022 stock fixed sights for sale at Walmart, for $189. It's a wrench,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a good first gun for kids because it teaches them bad things. It's like bang, 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 bang. Nobody's using their sights. Everybody's getting into trouble. But I think it is a good first sort of real gun for a kid who's cut his teeth on a single shot bolt action rifle. Yeah.
That's probably America's best next gun.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. That should have been a Ruger ad. America's best next gun.
Paul and the folks over there. America's best next gun. But something else about the 1022 is, that we always joke that the AR platform is Legos for adults or Tinker Toys for adults. The 1022, I would actually say, maybe they have as many accessories, because I know I've built and tinkered and taken down and rebuilt, and the cost is what's nice. And being a 22, it's a little easier in terms of the mechanical abilities. But yeah, if you like tinkering and messing around and putting accessories and taking them off and all that, you cannot beat the 1022.
They remind me of, there's that old adage about the guy picks up a hatchet and he says, "You know what? This hatchet has been in the family for 150 years. And you go, really? God, it looks really good. Well, we've had to replace the handle a few times. And we replaced the head a few times. But it's this hatchet, though, has been in our family. And I know, I have one or two. It's a Ruger 1022 rifle that you buy, right? And then you replace the barrel, and then you replace the stock, and then you replace the bolt, and you replace the action, you replace the sights, and then you just barely have that little aluminum receiver, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you replace that with another one. And so is that the same? I've had this gun in the family for 50 years, but
I got to tell you, I was watching a video last night, and this will not interest the hardcore shooters, but maybe other people. the guy in the video used that exact same analogy because he had a early 60s, I think it was a Gibson SG, and he took it all apart. He bought it. It looked awful, and it had been butchered up so badly that he had to route out a whole bunch of wood and all this kind of stuff. And he said, okay, the guitar is mostly mine. So is it still the Gibson SG or is it my creation? It looks like it did coming from the factory, but I mean, probably 2/3 of the wood had to be routed out and removed and new mahogany placed in. So that's a funny concept that, yeah, we've replaced everything, but it's still an original.
Well, you know what I find amazing, and you do the same thing with AR-15s, is that you can build a Ruger 1022 and have it have not a single Ruger part.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you can do the same, you know, you build every flavor AR you want to and never once use a Colt part.
Yep. Well, the final thing on the list is we got to include the shotguns. I'm a huge shotty fanatic, and I think they're the next thing. They're going to be the next big thing that we all suddenly discover in the gun journalism industry. Shotguns? It's a new thing. Well, they never went away, and like I said, for any cop of a certain age, they were your big firepower. And I had trouble trying to decide. I think the 870, the Remington 870, is certainly considered the classic, but I got to say the Mossberg 500, I'm going to put them both on that same pedestal because I think the Remington's a little bit older, and the Mossberg came a little bit after that, but they've been everything from nice hunting focused guns to tactical shotties and everything in between, and they're still made today, still widely used today. There's a bazillion of them out there. So the Remington, the Moston or whatever, it's still a viable gun for hunting or for self-defense.
You and I both, grew up with them on the police department mostly. I didn't have one until I joined the police department. Then I bought my own, a little short-barreled, riot gun.
Yeah.
No, I agree. We used to have a process that every time the guns were assigned to the police cars, and so when you would change a shift and go out and take over the car for your shift, we had a process where you were supposed to take the shotgun out. And then you had to do a 5-point safety check. So you took the barrel off, you did this, you looked, made sure.
Oh, wow. You guys are progressive.
Oh, yeah. We had to put a penny on the bolt and click it to make sure that it had a firing pin and put it together. Then you would load it with your own ammunition that you always had and put it back in the car. And so it was like, yeah, that was cool. Everybody, was always this little ceremony that you always did because everybody who would unload them, of course, at the end of your shift, put them back in the car. But we found out it was wearing the guns out, so fast.
Yep.
And so after a couple of years, we had all these loosey-goosey 870s that rattle and everything. So, but you know what? They always work. There's never anything about it, And I remember there was this one old guy. He was an old cop. I think he'd come on. Let's see. This would have been 75 for me. He'd come on in the 50s, early 50s.
Oh, my. An old mossy back.
Yeah. And he called it a dozen gauge. So, and I just always liked that because it's just like, give me that dozen gauge, boy.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that, you guys were really progressive. We took the other tack. We had those upright racks that had a secret button that you could release. You have a hole that goes down into a tube. What always ends up happening? Some guys use it as
put down.
straw paper, ashtray.
Yep. That was another reason why we had to do this because exactly they'd stuff napkins down, and it's like really.
I was that young tactical officer because I periodically took it out to make sure it didn't either blow up or my first shot on a bad guy was straw paper.
Yeah. Well, I actually bought. I don't remember who made it for me. It was a Smith Wesson 3000. It was a pump gun. Right.
Yeah.
And they authorized them. And so there was a while there where we were allowed to carry our own shotgun if we wanted to. So I bought a Smith & Wesson 3000 and tuned it up, made sure it worked really good. And then I got a bandolier and
Yeah.
loaded it up with like a dozen buckshot and some slug and some regular bird shot because you never know. So I would put that in the rack and hang the, bandolier around it and put the issue gun in the trunk. And so that solved all those problems of scary people putting straws down and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I got to say, and this could easily turn into, I don't know that we've ever done a just shotgun episode, but we need to do that. But first of all, I came up with a brilliant idea. Prophylactics would keep no, that's not going to happen.
No.
But the other thing was when you said bandolier, back in the days before the side saddle and all that stuff and the stocks, the speed feed stocks and all that, I went to I think Kmart at that time and bought one of those elastic, sling. Couldn't think of the word. That had, I forget what, 25 rounds, and they made the gun. I mean, it was literally weighed more than a boat anchor.
Yeah. Because it was actually on the sling.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And,
yeah.
If you slung the gun, you looked like a general from south of the border or a bandit because you had all this ammo. But it was reassuring. You took the gun out, and provided you had enough upper body strength, it was basically a crew-served weapon at that point. But you weren't going to run out of ammo. You had 25 ounces of lead you could throw down range.
That's very funny. You're right. Because I saw one of those, I tried it, and I said, well, this isn't going to work, right? So then I bought a regular bandolier, and I have to say, because you figure normally it's 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And that's what most cops had, 4 rounds.
Yeah.
Well, those could get used up pretty fast. And so when I would respond to like a bank alarm call or a burglary at nighttime and you had a perimeter slot or something like that, I would take this shotgun out and throw that bandolier around my shoulder. And I have to say it felt really, really good. And on more than one occasion, like during hot stops where I was a cover officer, cops would come back and they used to make fun of me. Right. Yeah. But after something like that, they'd look at that and they'd say, where'd you get that again?
Yeah. I always, and it never happened because, cops are proud, but I always wanted somebody to go, hey, can you just throw me some ammo? Well, no, remember, I'm Tackleberry. Ooh, no, this is mine. But I do think some guys, we had some incidents and guys started showing up with other options and some of the slings that had extra rounds on them. So the point came across that having extra ammo wasn't necessarily a bad thing because 4 rounds in a hairy gun fight will go by real fast.
You're right. So, I think, though, and if people nowadays, we have a lot of AR-15 fan people, for instance, and if you haven't discovered the sort of protection shotguns, it's worth a look. It really is. I will warn you, though, it's the same like people take an AR-15, they put every single widget on it you possibly can. So they turn a svelte, easy to carry, easy to handle gun into this lumbering gamer gun kind of. And people do that with shotguns. Basic shotgun, fixed sight. If you need an aperture, if you're shooting slugs, that's fine. Maybe a side saddle. Put a light on it, and you will solve virtually any problem you will ever encounter.
Yep. And, I got to say, I just saw this the other day in a video, and, the shotgun's always touted, you rack a shotgun and that'll stop the fight. I'm here to tell you it will not. But if it does, it's very effective. So I've often thought that that would be one of my points if I ever have to shoot somebody in my home. I'm going to bring up the fact that they heard me rack that shotgun and they still proceeded forward. That's on them. They chose poorly.
Well, you know what? I'm only going to tell one story. Okay. We had less lethal shotguns, and so for a while it was really, you had less lethal ammunition, but we only had one shotgun, which was our duty shotgun. And so we were always really concerned about, well, does this have less lethal in it? Does it have oopsie? And that happened on some agencies. So I shot him with a beanbag round, only it was double out buckshot. Oopsie. Right.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
Yeah, my bad. But I remember there was a time we had, I think they were orange stocked. So they were 870s and they had orange stocks, right? So those were always loaded and in the trunk with whatever less lethal we were using at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Beanbag rounds or whatever they were. And, but I remember there was a time there was a guy standing on top of a car complete Looney Tune nut job, right?
Yeah.
And this was before we had the tasers that could fire, you know? And so everyone's saying, get off the car, get off the car, get off the car. And finally we had enough of it. And somebody brought out one of the less lethal shotguns. And and I remember he said, it's just what you said. He racks the action, and everyone says, oh, that'll stop the fight. No. He said, what are you going to do? Shoot me?
Exactly.
So he did.
Yeah.
And I got to say, there was like this, what do they call that? Micro expressions or something? I think.
Microaggression. Yeah.
Yeah. As he realized he just shot me,
Yes.
so maybe you'll think before you act again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting. I don't know if people still do that or not with like a different, I think maybe.
I just watched a video of, in the state of Arizona, and this is another topic too, that less lethal is great if it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And I think law enforcement's finally realized, because there was a time when, we'll just use less lethal, right? Well, some people don't care. And my own funny story of, I've seen that, what are you going to do? Shoot me? Pow! Falls to the ground. Oh, didn't hurt.
yeah, I've seen that.
Sure, it didn't hurt. Let's put the cuffs on him now.
Yeah, we need to do a show like that. Let's just random police stories. See, people seem to enjoy it, and then they can share their own in the comments and stuff. So, but anyway,
we need to do that. We haven't done a old fart cop stories in a long time. We certainly need to do that. So, well, it's been great talking about this, and I know we've missed some stuff, but leave us a comment down below, or reach out to me, editor at gunspodcast.us, and tell us what you really like, what you think should be included on this list. And there's a billion guns, but the criteria is old guns that are still relevant today. So let us know what you think about that. And of course, this is the Guns Magazine presents gunspodcast.us. Make sure you stop by gunsmagazine.com and our sister publication, AmericanHandgunner.com. All your favorite writers are there. All the good stuff is there. And of course, we've got daily newsletters. You need to sign up for those and have all the goodness delivered to your inbox. And of course, Roy, I want to buy your book. I hear it's a really great book. Is that a softball pitch enough for you?
Yeah. Did I pay you enough? Yeah.
Yeah. No, fmgpubs.com is where you can go buy a copy of Roy's Insider book and John Connor's Odd Angry Shot and all of our special interest publications. They're still there, and they'll ship them right to you. And we're getting to that part of the season where it's kind of the holiday. And if you're looking for a great gift for the shooter in your life, go to fmgpubs.com and buy one of those books. So my guest today, of course, has been Roy Huntington, the unofficial co-host of the Guns Magazine Presents the Guns podcast. And I appreciate you joining us, Roy. On behalf of Roy and myself, I am the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. I'm going to remind you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.